From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
We're back. Peek behind the curtain. I'm trying to say this diplomatically, but most of the times now, I was thinking about when people use the word junk, and most of the times now, I only hear the word junk used in the phrase junk food, or honestly, when people are referring to their genitalia, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a good old trusty. I like that. There's also junk bonds. Remember that? That was like a financial thing. I think that refers to like crappy stocks. I don't really know.
I always think about a junkyard, like a place where cars go to die and then the parts of them live again.
That's poetic. Yeah.
Junk bonds are bonds issued by companies that have a high risk of default.
Right. It's a high risk, potentially high profit. But when we're talking about junk food, we're talking about a lot of junk, and we're talking about really fascinating modern history. Snacks have existed forever. Snacks predate the written word. Snacks predate human beings. We know that other primates and a vast assortment of animals have like their favorite preferred snacks and so on. And there are things that are considered like the primo goods to, corvids, to this applies to like cetaceans as well. Every living thing kind of loves snacks. But the idea of unhealthy, cheap, mass-produced food really kind of has its origin point in the popularization of refined sugar. And the harbinger of modern junk food, according to most food historians, the first really well-known example is Cracker Jacks. And I need some help on this one, guys. Is it Cracker Jack or Cracker Jacks? Is it singular or plural?
I thought it was apostrophe S.
Whoa,
I might be wrong.
Whoa, Matt, you're chaotic evil today. My goodness.
Cracker Jacks or Crackers Jack?
No, it's Cracker Jack. And okay. Jack is a character. Jack is the little dude with the dog. I'm not sure if Jack is the dude or the dog.
The dog's name is Bingo.
Okay, so Jack is the little sailor boy. Yeah. It's Cracker Jack. That's Cracker Jack. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cracker Jack is a caramel-coated, molasses-flavored mixture of popcorn and peanuts, famous at baseball fields around the country, that for some reason, inexplicably, has a sailor on the front of the box and his trusty dog Bingo, because someone back in the 1890s was like, you know what I think of when I think of popcorn and caramel and peanuts? And someone's like, oh, the Navy. And they're like, absolutely. That's our guy.
It's sort of like that girl with the umbrella on the salt,
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's that about?
I mean, at least,
and yet it's inextricably bound to salt now. I can't think about salt without thinking about that little girl holding the umbrella. It's classic imagery.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Peanut, at least that guy is like a peanut. Although he is very obviously a morally bankrupt peanut because he is selling out his fellows, right? He's the 1%er of peanuts.
He's got that monocle too, which is always a bad sign.
Right. And he's like, eat my brethren, eat of my flesh.
Wow. One thing I want to just bring up, because we talked about Cracker Jack, guys, is the fact that a lot of these brands we know that maybe we grew up with watching advertisements for or just eating as children, most of these, if not all, are now owned by another company. So Cracker Jack is now a part of Frito-Lay, the huge food company. And Frito-Lay, a huge food company, is owned by Pepsi, the Pepsi Corporation. So it's just like, again, those Matryoshka dolls. And in the end, there are only a handful of giant food conglomerates that own all the stuff.
Yeah, it's big one snack to rule them all vibes, because these, we'll talk about this too. It's something that should kind of disturb you, and we'll get to it. So what we can glean from all of this is that junk food in one form or another has been with this country for a long time, a delicious shadow just following modern society all the days of its life. The United States even has an official junk food day. This stuff is popular. As of 2017, the average resident of the U.S. was eating a diet where like 28.8% of their caloric intake came from what are sometimes euphemistically called nutrient poor foods, just like HFSS. It's another term for junk food. It's synonymous. 80% of people living in this country have reported that they eat fast food about once a month, at least once a month, right? That's the minimum. On the other side, if you're talking about people who never, ever eat at a fast food chain, you're talking about just like 4% of Americans. And, you know, we've got a lot of people in the crowd today who are, let's say, pescatarian or flexitarian or vegetarian or vegan. These, you know, and they may be motivated by a number of interests, like there may be ethical concerns, there may be dietary or health concerns. But even if you have a more tightly curated diet, it's quite possible for junk food to sneak into that diet, and for the brands that produce stuff you would never eat to just buy another company, another brand, and then sell you something under that label. That's what's happening. There is a true hidden hand at play here, and it's deeper than many people realize when they're in the grocery store. But like, if you like a sense of scale. So we said fast food is not always the same as junk food. There are healthy things you can eat at your local fast food joint. But just to get a sense of the economics at play here, I think it's important for us to note the fast food industry in the US alone rakes in about $160 billion in sales per year, every year. And that is just one slice of the junk food pizza pie, because that doesn't count the stuff we would call convenience foods. Like if you go to a gas station, like a popular gas station in the southeast of America is something called Quick Trip, which for some reason doesn't have a C in the name. It's QIK.
It's too quick for that. There's no time.
Right. They took the money they saved by cutting that C out of the signs, and they passed those savings on to you. Now shut up and eat your taquitos, which are delicious.
They are. And many of those now have their own mini fast food chain restaurants within them, which is a fascinating development, along with all the corn nuts and Chex Mix you could ever want.
Even some of the, like, you know, lower tier type gas stations will have like a little fried chicken counter or, you know, something like that. But you're right. Like Quick Trip is all about like pizzas. They have like a pizza counter, and you can order a whole pizza from Quick Trip.
Yeah, you can. And also, I want to give credit where it's due. Probably some of the best fried chicken I have ever personally experienced in this country has been in like hole in the wall gas stations. You know Absolutely. What I mean? It's just some guy. I don't even know if he works there or if he just like has chicken, you know, and it's almost always pretty great.
One of the best breakfast biscuits I've ever had in my life, and believe I ever will have, is at this little gas station in Athens, Georgia, called the Bread Basket. So check it out if you're ever in Athens. It's awesome. You can get them with like smoked red sausage links and like just the most fluffy, cheesy scrambled eggs and like totally homemade biscuits. And they sell out when they sell out. So that is a pro food tip for anybody passing through Athens.
Like the chicken guy, or like some of the best Mexican snack food is. We're very fortunate here in Atlanta for places like Buford Highway and Doraville, because some of the best food in the city is like hidden away in these little strip malls, and you wouldn't notice it, right? Until you go in and you have some of the most amazing food of your life. Is it good for you though? Right? That's the question. Well, we have to define good. All right. So as far as your body is concerned, as far as the millions of years of evolution that have molded you up to this point, as far as that's all concerned, this is great. This is aces. Those salty, sweet, fatty flavors are everything the human body has evolved to covet. Your digestive system is like, we are #winning. You know what I mean? We don't have to hunt and forage for another 12 hours or what. I don't know, just in case your primal brain is saying to you, but just in case, supersize those fries. You know, we don't know when we'll be here again. And even though you are not going to be hunted by some non-human predator at this point, your brain doesn't know that. Your brain is thinking, the wolves are coming. I need to have another cheeseburger just in case there's no food in the future. Like, this is junk food is a hack of this system, and it is turning sort of the dietary goals of your body against you. And that's where we get into some troubling aspects, because in terms of long-term health, as you pointed out, Matt, junk food can be pretty terrible. It is inarguably tied to a range of chronic health conditions, like you mentioned, diabetes, right? But then there's also serious heart problems, obesity, which is a huge thing and could maybe even be its own episode now. And it's important to note, obviously, when we say obesity, we are not shaming people for appearance or anything like that. We're building a case that the system of junk food is in a very real way stacked against you. The game is rigged. Why does it cost more to eat a salad than it does to eat a double cheeseburger, right? Especially if you consider the time that has to be factored into raising a cow and assembling all those ingredients. Anyway, it's nuts. We don't want to sound too cynical, but we've laid out a pretty compelling case here. There are good reasons why a growing number of critics say junk food isn't just delicious, it's also dangerous. And here's the last twist. The creators of this stuff may not really be after you so much as they're after your children.
And they already got you a long time ago.
Here's where it gets crazy. So yes, there's an actual conspiracy. The conspiracies are real, but it is a strange one because it is entirely legal for decades and decades. Food manufacturers, the Nestle's, the Unilevers, etc., and fast food companies knew that the best way to sell stuff was to make it cool to children. You're a kid. Let's say you're a kid and you're going to school, and some friend at school is eating lunch and they have like a fruit roll up. They're like, look at me, man. I'm styling and profiling. I've got that blue flavor fruit roll up or fruit by the foot or whatever. And you're impressionable. You want to be seen as equal with your peers in this social dynamic. And so the first thing you say when you get back home is something like, Mom, Dad, you don't understand. I need fruit snacks. Billy has fruit snacks. Do you not love me? Right. And this, like, this is real. No offense. You know, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but no, Matt, this is something that I feel is pretty common in the world of parenting.
Oh man, my kid eats like shit. I mean, I can't, I really, there's nothing I can do. She's just so particular and just likes, you know, chicken nuggets. And I really hope she grows up. I try, you guys. I try to sneak vegetables into spaghetti. It's awful. My hands are so tied and I don't know who to blame. I really hope it's just a phase. I was a picky eater too when I was a kid, you know, but you're right. I mean, she literally, she wants slushies all the time. She has this cute little thing she does where she goes, I need slushy. I'm like, what's happened to you? What's happened to you?
Yeah.
What have they done to you?
Well, I mean, I have nobody to blame but myself for some of our poor eating habits, and a lot of it has to do around when and where we eat. Like, what is the situation like when we sit down to eat? And for me, before I had a child, it was about a television. There's a television, there's a program on, and I'm consuming food while I'm consuming some content. And that translates to, for some reason, I think it's connected, certainly, but it translates for some reason to just poor eating habits for me and my family.
Is it because you need it to be like modular and portable and not like require like a sit down? Like, is that sort of part of it? Do you think the function of like the set and setting?
Maybe, I don't know. I think most of it has to do with convenience of like, oh, it's time to eat. We need to get some food together. Oh, what's in here? Oh, we don't have that much. I should go shopping. Oh, well, instead of doing that, let's just get some food right now.
That's it. Yeah, you nailed it, because there is another cost. So we're talking about, when we talk about cost, we should be very clear that we're not just talking about a financial expenditure at that time. We're talking about the other more important currency of human life, which is your personal time, the number of hours in the day. Nobody gets any extra hours of the day. And we've all at some point tried to have more than 24. So you are saving in the currency of time, at least for a short while, until, something happens and you end up having to spend that time at the doctor's office. Like, what gets me is, so I cook a lot. And I know all three of us enjoy cooking. But the trickiest thing for me is trying to predict myself. I barely know myself. I mean, I think most people barely know themselves, but it's like, I have this guy in my head and I have to get in front of him. I got to figure out when he's going to be hungry, like 30 minutes before he hips me to it. And that's like, why would you go through all that rigmarole when all you need is a $20 bill to be king for a day at Taco Bell? Like, it makes sense that people would do this. That is how the system is hacked. And this strategy of singling out and targeting children and leveraging their profound ability to influence their parents, to like curry favor. This strategy predates social media. And you see it, you see the same thing in the world of toys, right? And then later, as kids get older, you see it in the world of fashion and clothing. This strategy, believe it or not, in the world of food, it used to be even more blatant than it is today. Like, kids nowadays, I know it always feels like we're old when we start
Kids
sentences.
these days.
Kids these days, back in my day, blah, blah, blah. We're alive.
Stop it. Though. We're youthful, though. Come on. Podcasting keeps us youthful.
I was thinking about this, and it's just a personal moment for us. We all look pretty good. You know what I mean? Considering we've been through like 2+ years of a pandemic, we kind of kept it together. So,
more or less. Yeah.
Not me. Just considering this episode, I just got over the COVID thing, and seriously, I've gained 3 pounds because I didn't move, I didn't go anywhere, and Grubhub exists. That's why.
No joke, dude. I think, yeah. Well, at least for you, it was the COVID-3. For most, it was the COVID-15. So I don't want to hear any guff.
Okay. So I mean, I think that's a good point, because people are not monolithic, right? Everybody has their own set of circumstances and goals and constraints. And at the end of the day, everybody just not only wants to eat to fuel their machine that they live in, but they want to enjoy what they're doing. And the ability to choose what you eat is a big, big privilege. It's something that not everybody on the planet alive today, and that most people throughout history, it's just not something they could do. You know what I mean? They had to, for a long, long time, the majority of the human population existed on grains. that they could grow with free resources like time, soil, and water, or whatever they could hunt or forage. So the ability to say, let me pop over to a delivery service and get a lobster roll, get a lobster quesadilla. That didn't happen before. It's not normal, and human beings have not evolved to deal with the long-term consequences of that profound privilege. Like kids growing up now, we've talked about this before. We are all very lucky that we did not start YouTube channels as children, because the US does not have the European right to be forgotten legislation. There is a permanent record here, and it can be what people call cringeworthy. So imagine growing up in a world where one of the big milestones for you is being old enough to start an Instagram account or something like that. And so that's a real thing happening, right? There are people in the audience today who right now are having that conversation about like, how old is old enough for my kid to have a cell phone of some sort, right? We're living in a material world. I did not expect a Madonna reference, but that's where we are. So like, if you're 9 years old right now, you are living in a world where the advertisements don't turn off, because unlike television, unlike radio, it's not really an off switch for social media. You know, whenever you log in, that activity pings somewhere, right? In multiple processes and algorithms, and some decision tree occurs where it's like, this person is out here now. We've got them. We've got their eyes. Let's get their hearts and minds. And it's tremendously effective. I was reading some studies, like Matt, you mentioned off air that this is a big problem in the Western world in general, but I think you were surprised by the state of affairs in Canada. And I was likewise surprised by the state of affairs in Australia. There was a study I found conducted by Heather J. Baldwin and several of her colleagues, who breaks down how social media engagement correlates to dietary choices in young populations. These studies build a pretty clear case that sophisticated ad targeting programs are pushing kids to consume more unhealthy stuff more often, and have been doing so for a long time. Like, this ties into the concept of inequality. This ties into, of course, quarterly profits, so many other things, but why does it all matter, right? One of the big questions, one of the big badgers in the bag here is something I'm pretty sure a lot of people just asked themselves in the course of this episode. Isn't it up to the parents, right? Isn't it up to the guardians, the authority figures of these children to say, hey, pizza is a treat. Pizza's for closers. All right. So you better do well on that math test, or you better read those books and you'll get a personal pan pie. That's a little bit misleading. There are a lot of factors that tie into overconsumption of what we call junk food, and those factors add up down the road. It's clearly linked to distressing levels of obesity. Obesity is spiking in developing countries, and this rise in obesity is inarguably tied to the massive success of fast food and junk food marketing.
Oh, yes, Ben, it goes deeper than all of this stuff, especially physical fitness. There's another study in 2008. The Scripps Research Institute found data suggesting that consuming junk food can actually change your brain activity, how your brain thinks and feels about food. You want that sweet, salty, savory hit so bad your brain might just start treating it like an addictive drug, like my caffeine.
I did sober January, but I basically replaced alcohol with tons and tons of coffee. So I am now officially a coffee addict. But have you ever seen those stats that say cheese affects your brain the same way like crack cocaine does?
Mm-hmm. There's a great running joke. I can't remember it's a claymation series, but it's this guy who loves Wensleydale cheese. Anyway, yeah, cheese is amazing. Check out our big cheese episode. There is a real conspiracy We figured it out, and none of us stopped eating cheese because that stuff is astonishing. Go humans. Well done. Whoever that lazy
Figure that
bastard
out.
was who just didn't put the milk away for a while, you're a genius. You're a genius, and thank you for your service. So thank you for being so brilliantly lazy. So this is a long-term problem, and it hinges on a vulnerable population that ticks a lot of boxes for vulnerability. We're talking about populations that are often less wealthy. We're talking about children, right? Younger demographics. And then we're also talking about people who've often been historically disadvantaged. That's where you see a lot of rises of fast food consumption. And then years on, that's where you see the rise of chronic health conditions created by that consumption. Anyone who has ever had a food craving knows that addictive tendency that you're talking about, Bat. And look, people can look down their noses at some single parent feeding their kids fast food, but doing that denotes a lack of critical thinking, because if you really explore what is leading people to that decision, you're going to see that there's some harsh economic realities. Eating healthy food is a privilege. That is why the stuff that is good for you can sometimes be more expensive. Now, you know, the world is full of tips about how to navigate this. Like you can live a low cost vegan lifestyle and not pay out the nose, right? What's the old adage? You shop around the outside ring of the grocery store, right? That's where
That's right.
Yeah. The produce, the dairy.
Once they guide you into the labyrinth that is the interior, like there's no getting away from making bad choices. That's sort of like psychological, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, you know, once you're on aisle 7 or whatever, you happen by the Oreos, and you might not even particularly like Oreos, but you see that they're somehow Christmas flavored. And you're like, whoa, what does Christmas taste like? Next thing you know, you got some Oreos. Brilliant.
Tastes like memories.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so right now, what we're saying is the logic is clear. If you can feed your family effectively and cheaply, it becomes increasingly difficult not to do so. Why would you spend $8 on a single salad that only one person can eat? And if that one person is your kid, they're going to be mad about it. Why would you spend that $8 on that when that same $8 could feed you and the kid twice over at insert fast food joint here? But not Zaxby's for some reason. Zaxby's is kind of expensive.
So is Jersey Mike's. So anyway, I just want to say,
So is Chick-fil-A.
yeah. Not only would your child perhaps be upset about the salad being presented to them as their food intake, they may not eat it at all. And if your child is not eating, I mean, that is psychologically one of the worst things that you could deal with as a parent. So
yeah,
fast food.
That's a good point. Yeah, because you're kind of negotiating, right, with the kid. And when you're negotiating with a kid, you are not just negotiating with an 11-year-old or something. You're negotiating with millions of years of evolution that have like hardwired people to want these sensations and these tastes. The game
and
is
Child
kind of
Protective
rigged.
Services. Okay.
And CPS, yeah, and DFACS, of course, right? They're big. But there's something before we go.
Well, that's a sorry, real quick. That's a real question. Could you potentially be treated as abusive if you are feeding your child consistently poorly? Like,
oh no, I just meant
contributing to health.
I just meant if your
I'm
kid's
asking
not eating
off
at all.
Mike, maybe. I mean,
Yeah,
but I'm saying the opposite though. Like, I mean, if you're just constantly feeding chicken nuggets to your kid and then they develop childhood obesity or diabetes, is there some recourse to say like you were negligent in like your child's welfare?
Yeah. So right now, that is not something that people could be prosecuted for. You're just going to get side eye from other people who, for some wild reason, qualified to judge other parents, which is, you know, try not to do it. Right. Because you don't like that old Greco-Roman quote, everybody is fighting a great battle. Just try to be kind. I do want to point out one other way the system is rigged before we go to our next commercial break. I think I mentioned this years ago. I went to a Chick-fil-A and I wanted to buy a sandwich and some of those, like a small order of waffle fries and a soda. And when I ordered it, the person at the drive-thru said, "Okay, well, just get, a number one." And I said, "Well, I don't want the coleslaw though. I just want the sandwich, the fries, and the drink." And he said, "Well, it's more expensive if you just get those things separately. You have to get a number one." And I'm like, "Wait, are you saying that I have to pay you extra to not give me coleslaw?" Like these weird things happen when you're at an economy of scale. That's why a dollar value menu exists, right? Because these entities are of such an enormous size that they can lower their cost, lower their ultimate cost to the consumer, at least in financial terms. So if this conspiracy to sell kids unhealthy food, to lock them into those habits, if it does have a villain, that villain would be corporations, the manufacturers, the actors in the restaurant industry, collectively known as Big Food. We'll talk about why it's funny in a second. I think we should take an ad break.